right at the end of the Bible, right where the answers are. The answers are in the back of the book. 3 John is right before that. And we're now, having gone through 1st and 2nd John, again, we're familiar with him as a person, his writing style, and we recognize who he is. And he was probably very young when Jesus called him to be a disciple. He was probably in his teens, the youngest of the disciples when he began to be a follower of Jesus. But as he writes now these 3 letters that we see consecutively in our Bibles, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, he's an older man. And as he refers to himself here in the first 2 words, he's the elder. And that not only is speaking from a positional, authoritative thing, but in all actuality, he's an older man. He's a mature man. He would be part of our legacy group for sure. He would be the senior member of our legacy group. And so this 3rd letter that we're looking at now of his, again, like 2nd John, we referred to it as more like a postcard, really. And in fact, in the Greek, the language in which it was written, this is the shortest book of the New Testament when it comes to volume. It was most likely just one sheet of papyrus, and this is what it filled up, and this is what we have. But there's powerful things in small packages, and that's what we're going to find today. Now, for this postcard, I've titled our message through 3rd John, What's Your Witness? That's a question to ask yourselves. What do people think about you? What is said about you? You have a reputation. What is that reputation? If you were sitting in a restaurant, maybe today you go to the Palace after church and you're sitting there and all of a sudden you hear your name from the booth next to you. What's going to be said about you? Now, I shared, for some of you that have been to the small group presentation for our building, there's room tonight. You can still come tonight for sure at 6 o'clock. But I've shared in a couple of those that we've done that when the church first started, we met at the Adult Activity Center between Anderson and Ruby there. And the church, like we put all of our chips in, like we need sandwich boards. And so we spent our whole wad buying 2 sandwich boards, and one was on Anderson and one was on Ruby. And we're letting the world know that Calvary Chapel Ellensburg is meeting there, right? Well, on these sandwich boards was a church website, right? And then an arrow pointing to where we were meeting. A few weeks after we got started, we got a phone call, and at that point, the church's number and our home number was the same thing. And I was working at Weimar at the time. I was at work, and Charity picks up the phone, and the person, his name is Tim Multop. Tim says, hey, I saw your sign out there, and I live in the apartments right by there, and I looked up your church's website, and I saw that the pastor's name is Tad Scheffer. Now, I'm from Linden, and I know a Tad Scheffer, and it must be a different one. It's a unique name, but it must be a different Tad Scheffer. And is there any relation? And Charity had to, apologize for me, and like, what did he do to you? Like I was not a good guy. I had, anyway, I don't want to get into that. But the Bible has a lot to say about our reputation, our name, our identity, who we are. In fact, Solomon wrote a couple times about it. He wrote in Proverbs 22, verse 1, he said, a good name is to be chosen rather than great riches or loving favor or being esteemed rather than silver or gold. And like, do we feel that way? Do I feel that way? If someone has a handout to me of gold in today's market, I want some metals, right? Heavy metals are good. I'll take some of that. Or would I rather have a good name, an identity? And he says something much the same in Ecclesiastes 7, verse 1. He says, a good name is better than fine perfume. Perfume, cologne, it's great for a moment. Someone walks by, it grabs your attention. Oh, wow. It's attention grabbing, but as soon as it's there, it's gone. And that can happen with a reputation as well. You could ask Jesse Smollett about a reputation? Ellen DeGeneres, Matt Lauer, Josh Duggar. I could spend the rest of our time this morning talking about people who have lost their reputation, oftentimes in just a moment. You can lose it quickly, but to acquire truly a good name and reputation, and this is what makes it valuable, it takes time. You have to sow into that. There's work there. But if you do, your reputation may actually outlive you. That's what makes it so valuable. Well, we're going to look at some reputations of people that John writes about. But before we do, how about John himself, his reputation? We often call him the apostle of love. And I think that's a good moniker for him, the apostle of love. When Jesus was crucified and all the other disciples scattered, right, like sheep without a shepherd, there was John. John remained at the foot of the cross right there by Mary because love never fails. And he persevered there. He's the apostle of love. We call him the apostle of love. John calls himself 5 times in the Gospel of John, he refers to himself as the disciple whom Jesus loved, right? And it's not like at the detriment of the other disciples, like he was the most. I think he wrote that as well later in his life. And you know this probably as well, like the song Jesus Loved, we think it's like a kid's song, but the longer we walk with the Lord and the more we know ourselves, we're just more amazed at the fact that Jesus loves us, right? We can sing that song with much more meaning than we could when we were kids. And I think that's how John felt. Like, I know me, and he knows me, and he loves me. I'm the disciple whom Jesus loved. So that's what he referred to himself. We call him the apostle of love. Look, Jesus also had another name for him. Jesus called John and his brother James the sons of thunder. And if you're going to start like a tag team WWE wrestling thing, that'd be a great name, I think, the Sons of Thunder. But when he was younger, he was much more zealous, we'll put it. In Luke chapter 9, some of you are familiar with this event. Jesus and his disciples are headed to Jerusalem from the area of Galilee. To do so, they're going through Samaria. Jesus sends some messengers ahead, find us a place, prepare us a place, to spend the night. But when the Samaritans find out that he and the crew are Jews and that they're going to Jerusalem, they're like, yeah, no, we're full. We don't have any room for you guys. You're not welcome here. Well, John hears that, and John says, hey, Jesus, I have a really good idea. And his idea is, Lord, do you want us to command fire to come down from heaven and consume them? You just say the word, we'll zap them. Like, let's turn them let's smoke them right now. And then we'll have a place to stay. That's kind of like his attitude. And if you're newer in your walk, this doesn't work. Just call down fire. I've tried it. And it's not what we're about. Jesus told him, you don't know what manner of spirit you're of. The Son of Man did not come to destroy life, but to save life. It's part of my nature and my character. And so over time, that was young teenage John that would have said, let's call down fire, right? But over time, maturity, being conformed into the image of Christ, John became someone with a much different reputation. He became a reputation of someone that is the apostle of love, but he also balances that with truth. And that's, if you're here with us last week, that's kind of the theme of 2 John, is that we must love, but we must do it in the right way. Because the truth is, it's not loving to just affirm someone with every decision that they make in life. Like, there's bad decisions. It's not loving just to let someone go in life and make bad decisions. We must love, but not at the neglect of truth. But the other side of that, what John has learned to balance, is that we have to be truthful, but do so in love. And so that's what John has an opportunity to practice what he preaches here in John chapter 3. And so 2 John that we looked out last week went out broadly to a church, the elect lady and her children. 3 John is more specific. He begins in verse 1 by saying, the elder to the beloved Gaius, whom I love in truth. This letter, this little postcard, is more like the book of Philemon. Philemon is a book that Paul wrote to an individual named Philemon, and it's a personal little postcard. And that's what John is doing here. He's writing to a specific individual named Gaius, whom he loves in the truth. That's what we know about him for sure at this point, and we're going to find out more about his reputation. Now, if you read through the New Testament, there's a Gaius in Corinth that's mentioned a couple times in the book of Acts and Romans, and that could be the same person that's mentioned elsewhere in the New Testament. But Gaius was also one of the more popular names in the first century in the Roman Empire. Regardless of who this Gaius is, he's someone that we know already is beloved. He's close. He's tight with the Apostle John. And you know how there's some people that they're just a joy to be around, and some people are better to love from a distance? Gaius is someone that you just want to be with. They light up a room, and when you interact with them, you feel more fulfilled when you walk away. It's just like, that person, like, I think they genuinely care. They're not just asking questions to ask questions, right? Gaius is someone like, oh man, they're a joy to be around. And when I was thinking, of people that I know like that, there's a missions organization that our church has supported for years called Faith Comes by Hearing. And they translate the Bible into like 1,000 different languages and dialects. And for example, I was looking it up, and I was just like, you can pull up the country, and I pulled up Azerbaijan. It's one of the first ones. And 29 different languages and dialects pulled up on the app. The app is Bible.is. If anybody wants to check it out, it's really amazing. They also provide solar-powered Bibles that you could bring out into the bush or something, right? Or wind-up Bibles. And in fact, missionaries have taken these on missions trip or whatever, given them to nationals, and churches have started just by listening to the Bible. Now, primarily how we have been connected with this missions organization is through the military Bible stick program. That's thumb drives with the Bible on that chaplains put into the hands of active duty military. And so we have been working with these guys, great ministry, but our representative, all that to say, is a guy by the name of Andrew. I don't even know Andrew's last name, to be honest, but for years, when I would see the caller ID and it says that faith comes by hearing, I'm like, oh, Andrew's calling. I can't wait to talk to Andrew. He's incredible to talk to. Always just encouraging and uplifting. And like, I just spent 45 minutes talking. I don't spend 45 minutes talking to anybody, but I can spend 45 minutes talking to Andrew. Well, like last year before or so, I had a lot going on. I saw that they had called, left a message, and I said, hey, Pastor Isaac, can you call Faith Comes by Hearing? The representative's name is Andrew. He's a delight. You're going to love it. And could you just take care of that? Next week, Pastor Isaac comes to me and says, I called Faith Come by Hearing, and the guy, his name is Andrew. He's amazing. And I'm like, I know. That's what I'm trying to say. That's the kind of guy that Gaius appears to be. And so John loves him. He's beloved to him. He's a dear friend. And so he prays this blessing for Gaius. He says in verse 2, beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in health just as your soul prospers. Now, there's a large swath of folks who will use this verse to promote like a health, wealth, prosperity gospel, a lot of that stuff on TV, right? Like if you trust God and you have enough faith, then you're going to be in good health. But that's not what we see exampled in Scripture. In fact, Paul said in 2 Corinthians 4:16, though the outer man is perishing, it's dying, it's decaying, it's spoiling, it's rotting. The outer man, that's what's happening. But the inner man, that which is eternal, is being renewed day by day. Actually, what the Bible teaches is that our physical bodies and our spiritual life are in opposite trajectories. They're going in separate directions. Now, one day, we'll all be healed, and that's for sure. We're going to stand in the presence of the Lord and be there before the throne, and we're going to replace this broken down body, and the older you get, the more you're looking forward to that point, right? But until that moment happens, that brokenness may be what the Lord uses to grow us and to reach others. Because some of you understand, like when your physical body gets to this point that you can't depend on it, okay, I got to depend on God. I don't have any other options, right? And then other people see that. So-and-so is dealing with cancer. So-and-so is dealing with that. And they're going through it with such grace. It's just amazing. It's impressive. And it's actually encouraging to them, right? And so this verse isn't teaching that the level of Gaius's faith is determining his health. That's not what this is saying. In fact, this verse seems to be saying the opposite. It seems to be saying that Gaius spiritually, that his soul is really, really healthy. But physically, perhaps he's ailing. You know, we ask each other all the time, like, hey, how are things going? Right? That's a common question for us. And that's kind of what John is doing here with his beloved friend. The word prosper, where we get prosperity gospel and stuff, the word prosper means, it's a compound word in the Greek, and it means going in the right direction. And so he's saying, Gaius, your soul is going in the right direction. You are being renewed day by day. He's walking with the Lord. He's walking in truth. And so John, he's just speaking to his beloved friend. I pray that your health will match your soul, because your soul's going the right direction. If they're both, man, just in going, everything's going great then. That's what I want, going in the right direction. And so he prays this prayer of blessing. And then John says, you're an example to people. He says, verse 3, for I greatly rejoice when brethren came and testified of the truth that is in you, just as you walk in the truth. And so this Gaius, I can't wait to meet him. When you say, your reputation precedes you, that's this guy. John says, I've heard all about you. The brethren have all testified about you. You don't just know the truth. It's not just up here. You're living the truth. It's taking root inside of you. The truth is in you, and it's bearing fruit in your life. Your life is above reproach. And then he adds, I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth. Now, 3 John 4. When I think of 3 John, this is the verse in my mind that I know. I know this verse. And in part, it's a good verse for child dedication, right? No greater joy than my children walk in truth. You've probably all heard like the caricatures of PKs, pastor kids, right? Or maybe missionary kids or something like that, right? You live in this fishbowl. There's super high expectations, high standards. There's a real challenges that kids have to live up to. And like any kids, my kids have had their seasons, their ups and downs, their growing pains. But whether you're in ministry or not, whether they're PK kids or just kids, as a parent, you get to this point where nothing else is more important than this right here, that they walk in truth. It's not the career path that they've chosen. I don't care what you do, but walk with the Lord. That's what matters. I'm not trying to, live vicariously through you. I'm not trying to give you my aspirations and hope you fulfill all of that. It's, are you doing well? Are you walking in the truth? Are you and the Lord in this together? That's what matters. Everything else in life might be taken off. Maybe the career is going great. But if they're not living in the truth, as a parent, you can't even really enjoy it. And so there's real truth to this when it comes to parenting. And it is a good verse when it comes to dedicating children. But that's not exactly what John is referring to here. John is speaking not about his biological children. He's speaking about someone that he's pastored, someone he's fed, someone he's cared for. Man, if they're doing well, that brings me great joy. I wasn't born a pastor, as that illustration proved, like Tad Scheffer, right? But one thing I have learned is that when you go to a church, it's unintended. It's not, innocent enough. No one intends to be this way. But the relationship to the pastor becomes more consumer driven. I come and I receive, and then I get filled up and satisfied, and I go home. Okay? But for John, for the pastor, there's more to it than that. He doesn't show up to what he can get, but what he can give, right? And so now that I'm on the other side of things, I've realized to a greater degree how much this sheep-shepherd relationship is a great way to put it. And that's actually what pastor means. It means to shepherd. Again, this is just my heart. I love you guys. And it's a relationship that is resembling of a sheep and a shepherd. And if you have animals or sheep or whatever, on a nice brisk morning like this, you don't hop out in your truck and drive out in the pasture and take out a bale of hay and there you go, get back in my cozy Silverado and I'm fine, back to the house, right? A shepherd wants more than just like, there, you're fine, I fed you, now go home, okay? A shepherd wants to know his sheep are growing, that they're healthy, so healthy that they're able to fight off infection, right? That they're getting stronger, that they're reproducing, all of those things, right? That's what matters to John. And just personally, that's what matters to me. We're in the middle of a building campaign, and that's fine. That's not what it's about. And frankly, I wouldn't care if the church tripled in size. That means so little to me if no one is growing. If everybody is just staying at this state in their faith and there's no growth there, what's it for? I'm doing that for 3 times as many people? That's not what it's about. But what I want to hear, what John loves to hear, is that someone's growing in their relationship with the Lord. They're learning the word. They're more bold in their witness. They're being conformed into the image of Christ. They're more Christ-like. Their reputation is becoming something that's of value. And when that's happening, as John says here, I have no greater joy because I have this vision and calling on my life. And I know it's being fulfilled when I see the fruit in your life, Gaius. And that truth that is in you, it's beginning to not only do something in you, it's spilling out into those around you. Look what he says in verse 5. Beloved, you do faithfully whatever you do for the brethren and for strangers who have borne witness of your love before the church. If you send them forward on their journey in a manner worthy of God, you do well because they went forth for his name's sake, taking nothing from the Gentiles. Gaius is praised for his loyalty and his faithfulness. Like, you're just a faithful brother. In 1 Corinthians 4:2, it says, moreover, what is required of a steward, but that he be found faithful, not successful, not super talented, faithful. And ultimately, that's what every single person in this room wants. At the end of this life, when they're meeting Jesus Christ face to face, what they want to hear is what Jesus said in Matthew 25. Well done, my good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of the Lord. That's what we want to hear, faithfulness. And Gaius has got it. So whether it's a big thing, little thing, man, we want to be found faithful. And so John thanks him. He thanks him for his faithfulness in regards to what? Well, he says providing for and supporting those who are traveling, doing the work of the ministry. They don't have to look to the Gentiles for their provision. The ministry shouldn't have to look to the world for provision, okay? And you're able to support and encourage those who are laboring in the ministry. And then what he's going to say now in verse 8 is that you're able to partake of the fruit of their ministry. He says, we therefore ought to receive such that we may become fellow workers for the truth. To support a ministry is to share in that ministry. And the fruit that comes through those that are doing the work is added to our account if we support and we provide And we encourage, we get some of that with us. You know, if you walk down this back hall, there's missionaries all over the wall. There's some that fell down. Like there's lots of missionaries that we support, and they don't fall in from Christ. They fall in from our wall. But, there's a ton of pastors in India, pastors in Vietnam. I don't even know that's on the wall, but there's local missions that we support. There's been missions that we have done this. The military Bible stick. I don't know, hundreds of Bible sticks are now in the hands of soldiers because of us. And we partake in that. We've planted a church in Uganda. We've been to Haiti, all the disaster relief trips. I think we've been on like 10 disaster relief trips. Those who partake in that, as you support that ministry, as he puts it, you become a fellow worker in that. You don't have to be on the front lines to be a part of the work. And so Gaius here, he's just, what a guy. Man, we all could use some more Gaiuses in our life. He's beloved by John. He's a blessing to the fellowship. But not everybody is as gracious as Gaius. Next, in verses 9 through 11, there's Diotrephes. And Diotrephes reminds us that even the early church, shortly after Pentecost, had problems. Like, how could the early church have problems? Because there's people in the early church, okay? And people create problems. Gaius made you feel full, but Diotrephes was divisive. Verse 9, I wrote to the church, and this could be translated, maybe someone's Bible has it this way. I wanted to write the church, but Diotrephes, who loves to have the preeminence among them, does not receive us. Now, Diotrephes sounds like a medical condition. It sounds like I was working in the nursery last Sunday, and then on Wednesday, man, I had a full-blown case of Diotrephes. But it's a name, and what he has is worse than whatever you're going to catch in the nursery. The word ministry, it means to serve. That's what the word means. But Diotrephes wanted to be served in the ministry. And it's totally the wrong attitude. He desired a reputation, but he desired more than a reputation. He wanted to be highly regarded for the sake of being regarded highly, more highly than those around him. And maybe you've met a Diotrephes. Maybe you've met someone that wanted the preeminence. And most of the other translations I looked at worded it something like this. Diotrephes loves to be in first place. Anybody know someone like that? Is that person looking at you in the mirror a little bit? If we're honest, there's a little bit of Diotrephes in all of us, right? Let's be honest about that. But Diotrephes here, he wanted to be the standard by which the other Christians were judged. And he wanted the preeminence. He wanted to be viewed as better, maybe a little bit more knowledgeable, a little holier, a little more sanctified, serious, a little more organized. He wanted to be just more than the average Christian. Now, wanting those things in and of itself isn't necessarily bad. It's good to want to be holy and righteous and organized. But hand in hand with that, the one that wants preeminence also thinks everybody else is less. Their parenting, well, I wouldn't raise my kids that way. Their marriage, I don't know, guess it works for them, right? They're less organized. They seem less worshipful than I am, right? Everyone comes up short to someone like Diotrephes. And that's not hyperbole. Everyone comes up short, including the Apostle John. He wouldn't receive us. Verse 10, therefore, if I come, I will call to mind his deeds, which he does. Okay, we learned in 2 John that love manifests itself in correction. Love just doesn't gloss over and ignore, right? Proverbs 27, if you take notes, Proverbs 27, verses 5 and 6 say, better is open rebuke than love that is concealed. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but deceitful are the kisses of an enemy. Daniel Robertson, some of you that were here maybe in our summer barbecues, he did a devotional on this, a fantastic devo on this. And I truly believe that as John is writing this, he didn't suddenly stop being the apostle of love. that he genuinely loved and cared for Diotrephes and had a heart for him. Because the people that care the most about you are the ones that not only encourage you, but they care enough to point out your weaknesses and your blind spots. You ever, have something in your teeth and you don't realize it? Or maybe like your zipper's down? Or maybe both at the same time? Like it's just a mess, right? And no one says anything to you. And then like the 10th person that day that you have a long conversation with says, you got something, you got some stuff going on. You better check it out, right? And you're like, those other people are perfectly content to allow me to go through life embarrassing myself, right? Love doesn't ignore that. In fact, this was not intentional. I put this shirt on today. After the first service, I'm out in the lobby, and Charity goes, "Can you turn around?" I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "What is all over your back?" I'm like, "I don't know." Apparently, I'm like, I went through I can't tell. Someone said it looked like bird poop. I haven't even seen it yet. No one said anything to me. Just allowed me to go through life. And then my wife, out of love, tells me, "You look like trash today." You can quote me on this. Love will tell you your zipper's down, okay? John says, I love him enough. I'm going to talk to him. We're going to work on this. I'm going to talk to them. Because he's got these deeds. Now, what are those deeds? Well, he says, prating against us with malicious words. I assume most of us haven't used the word prating recently, but as a kid, every so often, after church on Sundays, we would have roast pastor for lunch. Anybody know what I'm talking about, right? After church, you spend your time over a meal analyzing, criticizing the church, the ministry. Why do they do that? And especially the pastor. He said what? Why did he make a big deal about, did he swear? Like, what's he doing? Like, why did he do that? And apparently Diotrephes was having roast Apostle John. And the Amplified Bible puts it this way: unjustly accusing us with wicked words and unjustified charges. Just backbiting, slandering. Maybe not overt, but conversations and comments that are heard secondhand, just cutting enough so that someone that's hearing, that person is diminished in their sight. They may call him the apostle of love, but his life's a mess. I mean, he doesn't have it all together. Whatever was said about John, it wasn't done in love. It wasn't done to build up, but to belittle, because Diotrephes wanted the preeminence. I'm better. And so I'm going to put the Apostle John down. And that pride, it not only affected Diotrephes and the Apostles John's relationship, it begins to affect those around them. Look what it says next. And not content with that, he himself does not receive the brethren and forbids those who wish to, putting them out of the church. Even if Diotrephes, whatever the issue, the underlying issue was, even if Diotrephes was right about that issue, he's now made himself wrong in how he's responded. He doesn't have that balance of truth and love, and the issue has stopped being the issue. And so John, I think in love, says, I'll deal with Diotrephes. But back to you, Gaius, verse 11. Beloved, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. He who does good is of God, but he who does evil has not seen God. So Diotrephes, he says, I'm going to talk to him, and he should be a shepherd, but he's treating people like a boss, kicking people out of church. Don't follow that pattern of ministry. Maybe he's, by world standards, a gifted leader, but we have different methods. As Paul said in 1 Corinthians 11, verse 1, he says, follow me or imitate me as I imitate Christ. We have a different MO in how we go about things. And so there's Gaius the generous, Diotrephes the divisive, and now third in verse 12, Demetrius the dependable. Look what it says about Demetrius. Verse 12, Demetrius has a good testimony from all and from the truth itself. And we also bear witness, and you know that our testimony is true. That's all we have for Demetrius. One verse, but what a verse. He's just a faithful brother, and everyone in the truth knows it, or in the church knows it. He loves the truth, and just, man, he's a good guy. He's got a good testimony. He's someone you could model yourself after. Now, verse 13, he concludes this little postcard. I had many things to write, but I do not wish to write you with pen and ink. But I hope to see you shortly, and we will speak face to face. Peace to you. Our friends greet you. Greet the friends by name. How great would that be? You know, that Gaius is reading this, and then he says, hey, Andy, John says hi to you. Cody, John says hi to you. David, John says hi to you. You know, it's just personal. I love that. He is the apostle of love. I want them to know firsthand. But he closes this third letter of John, much like he did the second letter. I have more I want to say, but I want to do it in person. Now, to get back to our original question and the title of the message, what is your testimony? What's your witness? When you think of Gaius and Diotrephes and Demetrius, who do you identify with most? Who do you want to identify with most? And maybe, you know, like I said, if we're honest, probably have a little bit of all three in there. But my encouragement as we get ready to leave this morning is let's be a church that in our valley, we have less Diotrephes in our character and our nature, and more Gaius, more Demetrius, just faithfulness, kindness, loyalty, in the truth, good reputation, all of that. That type of church is a place that people are growing, they're maturing, and others want to be a part of that. Amen?